"Don't look between my legs," the giant widow warned, but when the lonely cowboy did, the sun was just rising over the rolling hills of the countryside, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The cowboy rode slowly along the dusty road, the creak of his saddle echoing in the quiet morning. His horse was strong and steady, though a little worn from long days of travel. The cowboy himself was a man of quiet strength. His clothes were simple, worn, and covered in dust from many miles on the road. His hat was pulled low over his eyes, partly to shield them from the sun, and partly to hide the loneliness he carried deep inside. He had been traveling for weeks, moving from one small town to another, looking for work, food, and perhaps a place to belong. Life on the road was hard, and he had grown used to eating little, sleeping wherever he could, and speaking only when necessary. People often looked at him with suspicion or curiosity because he kept to himself, but that never bothered him. He had learned long ago that solitude was better than company that didn't understand him. That morning, as he rounded a bend in the road, he saw something unusual. A large, sprawling ranch sitting alone on a hill, surrounded by wooden fences and open fields. Smoke rose gently from a chimney, and he could hear the faint sound of animals moving in the pens. The ranch seemed almost too big for one person, and there was an air of quiet strength about it. Something told him that this place, unlike the towns he had been passing through, had a story to tell. He urged his horse forward and soon found himself at the front gate. A woman appeared from the porch of the main house. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. She was tall, much taller than most women he had met, and her presence was commanding. There was a sharpness to her gaze, but also a hint of sadness behind her eyes. She carried herself with confidence, as if she had faced more than her share of life's challenges. "Who are you, and what do you want?" her voice called out. It was strong yet calm, and carried the weight of someone used to giving orders. "I'm just a traveler, ma'am," the cowboy replied politely, tipping his hat. "I'm looking for work. I can do chores, help with the animals, whatever needs doing." The woman studied him for a long moment. There was something in his eyes that made her pause. An honesty, perhaps, or a quiet strength that reminded her of someone she had once known. Finally, she spoke, her voice firm but not unkind. "Work, huh? I might have some things you can do. But let me warn you, there are rules here. You follow them, or you leave. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice steady. She gave him a small nod and gestured toward the barn. "Start with the horses. Make sure they're fed and the stables are clean. Then I'll see if there's more work for you." The cowboy dismounted and tied his horse near the barn. It took a moment to look around, noting the size of the ranch and the care she had taken with every detail. Everything was neat, clean, and organized. There was pride in this place, and it was clear that it had been built and maintained with great effort. As he worked, the woman watched him from a distance. She noticed the careful way he handled the horses, the patience in his movements, and the quiet respect he showed for the animals. Most people who came here didn't treat her property with such care. Some were careless, some lazy, and some simply didn't care. But this man, he seemed different. After a while, she approached him. Her steps were quiet but deliberate, and when she spoke, he looked up immediately. "Name's Martha," she said. "And you are?" "Call me Jake," he replied. Martha's eyes narrowed slightly, as if trying to read him. Then she said something that made him pause. "Jake, don't look between my legs." Jake blinked, confused for a moment, and then forced a small laugh. All right, ma'am." He wasn't sure what she meant exactly, but he had learned long ago that some things were better left alone. She was serious, though, and he knew better than to test her patience. The day went on slowly. Jake fed the horses, cleaned the stables, and helped repair a fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. He noticed that Martha was watching him from time to time, sometimes silently, sometimes with a sharp word of instruction. Her voice was firm, but there was also a sense of caution in the way she spoke to him. She had clearly been through a lot in life, and she didn't let just anyone get close. As the afternoon sun grew warmer, Jake finished his chores and sat down on the edge of the porch to rest. He wiped the sweat from his brow and looked out over the fields. The ranch was beautiful, quiet, and full of life, but there was also a sense of loneliness that hung over it like a shadow. He could feel it in the way Martha moved, in the way the animals seemed to respond to her presence. There was a story here and he wanted to know it, but he also knew better than to push. Martha came out of the house carrying a bucket of water. She set it down near him and said, "You're doing fine so far. Don't get too comfortable, though. I have a lot of work that needs to be done, and I don't pay people to sit around." Jake smiled politely. "I don't mind hard work, ma'am. Keeps the mind clear." She gave him a look that was both challenging and approving. "Keep it that way. And remember what I said." "Yes, ma'am," he replied, though he couldn't help but wonder about her warning. What did she mean by it? Why did she feel the need to say that to a man she had just met? He decided to let it go for now. Some things were better understood in time. As the sun began to set, the ranch took on a golden glow. The shadows of the fences stretched along across the fields, and the horses moved slowly as they settled in for the night. Jake had finished all the work she had asked of him, and he felt a sense of satisfaction. There was something about this place, about the quiet strength of the woman who owned it, that made him feel like he was finally somewhere that mattered. Martha came out again, this time carrying a lantern. She held it high, casting a warm light over the porch. "It's getting late," she said. "You can rest in the small guest room. I'll have supper ready soon. You'll eat with me, but remember, respect the rules." Jake nodded, feeling a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. The guest room was simple but clean, with a small bed and a window that looked out over the fields. He unpacked his few belongings and sat on the bed for a moment thinking about the day. He had met many people on his travels, but none quite like Martha. There was something about her, something strong, fierce, and yet fragile, that made him want to stay, to earn her trust, and perhaps to understand her story. As night fell, the sounds of the ranch changed. The wind whispered through the trees, and the occasional call of an owl echoed in the distance. Jake lay in bed listening to the quiet, feeling the weight of his own loneliness and the strange pull of this place. He knew that tomorrow would bring more work, more challenges, and perhaps more understanding of the woman who had so boldly warned him not to look where he wasn't supposed to. He drifted off to sleep with a sense of anticipation. The ranch, the widow, and the life she had built were mysteries he wanted to explore. But he knew he had to be patient. Trust was not given lightly, and respect was the key to opening the door to someone who had been hurt before. In the quiet darkness of the night, Martha watched from her window as a cowboy slept in the guest room. She felt a strange mixture of hope and caution. There was something about him, something that made her believe that maybe, just maybe, this lonely traveler could be different, but she would wait and see. Trust, after all, could not be rushed. And so, under the starlit sky, two lives, each shaped by loneliness, hardship, and quiet strength, stood at the edge of a new beginning. The cowboy had arrived at the ranch seeking work, but he had found something more. The chance to be part of a story far bigger than himself. A story that would test patience, respect, and the courage to connect with another human being in a world that often forgot the value of kindness. The night was calm, but the air was full of possibility. The journey had just begun, and both the cowboy and the widow would soon discover that life had a way of surprising those who dared to take the first step. The next morning the sun rose slowly, spilling light over the wide fields and the sturdy buildings of the ranch. The cowboy Jake woke to the soft sounds of the animals beginning their day. Horses neighed in the stables, and chickens clucked as they moved about the yard. He stretched, feeling the soreness from the previous day's work, but also a quiet satisfaction. There was something about working with his hands, about being useful, that made him feel alive in a way the lonely road never had. He dressed quickly and stepped outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. The ranch was already alive with motion. Martha, the widow, was walking toward the barn, her long strides confident and commanding. She carried a small bundle of tools and a determined expression. Even from a distance, Jake could see the strength in her frame, the kind that comes not from muscles alone, but from years of handling life's burdens with resilience. "Morning," Jake called politely, tipping his hat. Martha nodded but didn't speak at first. She was watching him closely, observing how he carried himself, how he moved around the barn and the animals. Finally, she said, "Today, you'll help me with the cattle. Some of them need checking. And remember," she paused, her voice firm, "don't look between my legs." The warning was still strange, but he knew better than to question it. He gave a small nod. "Yes, ma'am." The morning passed in a rhythm of work and quiet observation. Jake followed her instructions carefully, helping with the cattle, moving them from one pen to another, checking for injuries or signs of illness. Martha's sharp eyes missed nothing, and she occasionally corrected him with a word or two, not out of anger, but out of necessity. She had been doing this work alone for years, and she knew exactly how things should be done. As they worked, Jake noticed subtle hints of her past. The way she hesitated before touching certain equipment, the slight sadness in her eyes when she looked at an empty stall, and the quiet way she spoke to the animals, as if they could understand her. It was clear that she had faced many challenges, and the ranch was more than just a home. It was a testament to her endurance and strength. During a short break, they sat on a fallen log under the shade of a tree. Jake drank water from his canteen, trying not to appear too tired, while Martha leaned back, her eyes scanning the fields. "You're good with the animals," she said after a while, almost as if testing him. "I've had practice," Jake replied simply. "They usually trust me, and I respect them." "That's all." Martha nodded thoughtfully. "Respect, yes, that's rare these days. Most people think they can force respect out of others, or that it comes with fear. You don't." Jake shrugged. "I don't like fear. Makes life harder than it needs to be." There was a silence between them then, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that comes when two people are sizing each other up, trying to understand one another without words. Martha's expression softened, just slightly. She was still guarded, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. The work continued through the late morning and into the afternoon. At one point, a young calf stumbled near the fence, and Jake rushed to help it before it could injure itself. Martha watched, her expression unreadable, until the calf was safely back on its feet. Then she gave a brief nod of approval.
"You're learning quickly," she said.
"Maybe you're not like the others who've come here before." Jake smiled faintly. "I've had to learn quickly. Life doesn't wait." As the sun climbed higher, the heat made the work more difficult. They rested again, this time near the barn. Martha handed Jake a small towel to wipe the sweat from his face. Her hands were strong and rough, the hands of someone who had spent decades working the land and the animals. There was no softness here, but there was skill, precision, and quiet power. Jake couldn't help but be curious. Her warning from yesterday echoed in his mind. "Don't look between my legs." He had been careful so far, but now, sitting near her, he wondered what she had meant. His curiosity gnawed at him, but he reminded himself that trust was earned, not demanded. He focused instead on observing her eyes, the way she moved, and the subtle kindness she showed to the animals around her. Later, they moved on to repairing a broken section of the fence near the back pasture. Jake handed her tools when needed, and watched as she worked with ease, despite her tall and strong frame. There was a grace to her movements, a combination of power and precision that was rare to see. "You've done more in a few hours than most men do in a day," Martha said, not as a compliment, but as a statement of fact. "I'm not most men," Jake replied quietly, though he didn't mean it arrogantly. Martha raised an eyebrow but said nothing, returning to her work. She was testing him, in a way, seeing if he could handle not just the labor but the discipline and patience needed to be around her. Most people failed that test quickly, but Jake seemed to pass without even realizing it. As the afternoon wore on, the sky began to darken with clouds, signaling an approaching storm. Martha's expression tightened slightly. "We need to secure the animals before the rain comes," she said. Together they hurried to move the horses and cattle to safer pens. The wind began to pick up, and the first drops of rain fell. Jake worked quickly, his hands steady despite the growing storm, while Martha coordinated the animals with precise commands. There was a sense of urgency, but also teamwork. For the first time, Jake felt truly part of something bigger than himself. Once the animals were secure, they both took shelter under the barn's overhang. Rain poured down around them, drumming loudly on the roof. Martha looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You didn't look," she said quietly, almost as if acknowledging his restraint.
"I didn't," Jake replied honestly. "I respect your warning."
"I know some things aren't meant to be tested." Martha's eyes softened slightly. There was a flicker of approval, and perhaps even a hint of relief. Trust was a fragile thing, and Jake had not broken it. The storm continued for a while, giving them both time to rest and talk quietly. They shared small stories about their pasts. Jake spoke of his travels, the work he had done, and the loneliness of life on the road. Martha spoke sparingly, revealing just enough about her life to show the weight she carried. She had lost her husband many years ago, and though she never spoke openly about it, Jake could sense the pain and the strength it had left behind. By the time the storm passed, the ranch smelled of wet earth and fresh grass. The air was cool and clean, and a rainbow stretched across the sky. They emerged from the barn together, walking through the fields to check that everything was secure. There was a quiet companionship between them now, an unspoken understanding. That evening, Martha prepared a simple meal. Jake sat across from her at the wooden table, feeling both nervous and comfortable at the same time. The room was warm, lit by the soft glow of lanterns. "You've done well today," she said. "I can see that you're not just strong with your hands, but also with your character. That's rare. I try to do right by people and by animals. That's a start, but remember, trust takes time. You'll need more than skill to earn a place here." Jake understood. He didn't expect her trust to come easily. He was willing to wait, willing to prove himself, and willing to respect the boundaries she had set. As night fell, Jake went to the guest room, reflecting on the day. He realized that the warning she had given him yesterday was more than just a simple instruction. It was a test. It was about respect, restraint, and understanding the experiences that had shaped her life. He felt a growing sense of admiration for her strength and independence, and he knew that if he wanted to be part of her world, he would have to earn it, step by step. Meanwhile, Martha watched from her window as the cowboy settled in for the night. There was a quiet tension in her chest, a mixture of hope and caution. She had seen many people come and go, but there was something different about him, something that made her believe that he could be trusted, if only he proved himself further. And so, under the calm of the night sky, the ranch settled into silence. The animals rested, the wind whispered through the trees, and two lives, each shaped by solitude and resilience, began to intertwine. The cowboy had not only proven his skill and patience, but he had also shown respect for the woman who had guarded her heart so fiercely. The stage was set for a deeper connection, one built on trust, understanding, and the slow unfolding of companionship. Little did they know, the challenges and revelations of the coming days would test both their strength and their hearts in ways they had never imagined. The next morning, the ranch was alive with movement and sound. Birds chirped in the trees, and the animals had settled into their usual routines after the storm. Jake woke early, as was his habit, and dressed quickly. The day promised to be busy, and he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Over the past 2 days, he had begun to feel a connection to this place, and to Martha. But he knew better than to rush anything. Trust, after all, was earned slowly, and Martha had made it clear that patience was required. He stepped outside into the cool morning air and saw Martha already at work. He was near the barn, checking the fences and making notes about repairs that would be needed. The sunlight highlighted the lines of her face and the strength in her tall frame. She moved with precision, handling tools and equipment with a practiced ease that came from years of managing the ranch alone. "Morning," Jake said, tipping his hat as he approached. "Morning," Martha replied without looking up. Then, after a pause, she added, Today, we're going to fix the north pasture fence and check the cattle there. Be ready to move quickly. Some of those fences are tricky and the terrain is rough." Jake nodded. "I'm ready, ma'am." They worked together throughout the morning, moving posts, tightening wires, and securing gates. Jake was careful, following Martha's instructions precisely, and she noticed. She had met many men who thought they could do things their way, ignoring rules and advice. Jake, however, listened and adapted, showing respect not just for her instructions, but also for the land and animals. During a break, they sat on a fallen log under the shade of an old oak tree. The silence between them was comfortable this time, filled with the soft sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cows, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the occasional call of a hawk circling above. Martha finally spoke. "You've done well, Jake, not just with the work, but with how you carry yourself. Most people rush through things or try to prove something. You observe. You think. You respect." Jake smiled faintly. "Thank you, ma'am. I've learned that rushing or forcing things usually ends badly. Life has a way of teaching lessons if you're willing to listen." Martha's gaze softened slightly. She had spent years managing the ranch alone, relying only on her own strength and judgment. The idea that someone could approach her with quiet respect rather than arrogance or fear was unfamiliar, but it was also refreshing. They returned to work, moving to the north pasture. The land here was uneven, dotted with rocks and shrubs, and the fence had been damaged in the storm. Jake worked carefully, handing Martha tools, securing posts, and checking the wires. At one point, a large bull broke away from the herd and charged toward the fence. Jake reacted quickly, stepping between the animal and the damaged fence, guiding it safely back into the pen. Martha watched, impressed by his quick thinking and bravery. "Good job," she said, her voice carrying a rare note of genuine approval. "Just doing my part," Jake replied, brushing dust from his hands. By late afternoon, the work was done. The fences were repaired, the cattle were safe, and the land was secure. Jake was tired but satisfied. Martha looked at him with a mix of appreciation and curiosity. "You've got strength," she said, "but it's more than physical. You've got patience, observation, and restraint. That's rare in men these days." Jake felt a small swell of pride, but he didn't let it show. "I've learned that the hard way," he said simply. Martha studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said, "There's more to life than work, Jake. Out here, people often forget that. But I can see that you understand that. That's why I don't mind having you around. You respect the rules and the people who live by them." Her words touched him more than she knew. Jake had traveled alone for so long, meeting people who either ignored him or judged him harshly. Here he felt seen, not just for what he could do with his hands, but for who he was as a person. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, they walked back toward the main house. The air was warm and filled with the scents of fresh earth and wildflowers. The animals settled into the pens for the night, and the ranch grew quiet except for the distant sounds of the countryside. Inside, Martha prepared a simple meal. The kitchen was small but efficient, filled with the aroma of cooking. Jake sat at the wooden table, watching her move around the room with ease and confidence. She served the food silently, then sat across from him. "You've earned your supper," she said quietly. "But remember, Jake, trust isn't given easily. You have to keep earning it every day." "I understand, ma'am," Jake replied. "I'm willing to do that." They ate in silence for a few minutes, the only sound being the occasional clink of utensils and the crackle of the fire. Then Martha spoke again. "I wasn't always like this. There was a time when I trusted easily, believed in people. But life, it teaches lessons in hard ways. I've lost people I cared about. I've been hurt. That's why I set rules, and that's why I gave you a warning yesterday." Jake listened intently, sensing the weight of her words. "I don't know your full story," he said carefully, "but I can see that you've been through a lot. I don't want to cause you pain. I just want to do my best and, maybe in time, earn your trust." Martha looked at him for a long moment. There was a flicker of something in her eyes, perhaps hope, perhaps caution. "You're different from the others," she said finally. "Different enough that maybe I can let you see parts of me that no one else has. But it's slow, Jake. Very slow." "I can wait," he replied quietly, his voice steady. "I've waited a long time already." The night passed peacefully. Jake lay in the guest room, thinking about the day, the work, and the woman who had cautiously begun to let him into her life. He realized that the connection he felt was not just about physical proximity or shared work. It was about understanding, respect, and the slow building of trust. The following days brought more work and more opportunities to learn about Martha. He discovered that she had a sharp mind for business and an intuitive understanding of the land. She was capable of handling anything that came her way, and she expected those around her to rise to the challenge. Jake found himself growing not just stronger in body, but more thoughtful, more patient, and more aware of the subtleties of human behavior. One afternoon, as they worked together in the fields, Martha paused and looked at him. "Jake, there's something I need to show you. It's part of why I warned you yesterday. But you need to promise me that you'll respect it, no matter what you see." Jake nodded, his curiosity piqued but tempered by caution. "I promise, ma'am. I'll respect it." Martha led him to a part of the ranch he hadn't seen before, a small enclosed area behind the house. She stopped and turned to him. "This is my private space. Not just physically, but emotionally. I've been hurt here before. That warning yesterday, it wasn't just words. It was a boundary. I need you to respect it." Jake met her eyes, seeing the seriousness and vulnerability there. He realized that the warning, which had seemed strange at first, was a reflection of the life she had lived, a life filled with loss, caution, and resilience. "I understand, Martha," he said sincerely. "I'll respect this." "I won't cross your boundaries." Her shoulders relaxed slightly, and a small, almost imperceptible smile appeared. "Good. That's the first step. Respect is the foundation of everything here, whether it's with me, the animals, or the land itself." In the days that followed, Jake continued to prove himself, not just through work, but through patience, understanding, and care. He began to see glimpses of the woman behind the strong exterior, a woman who had loved and lost, who had been hurt by life, and who had built the sanctuary not just for herself, but for anyone willing to earn a place in it. One evening, after a long day, they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset, the colors of the sky reflected in the distant hills, and the ranch was quiet, except for the soft sounds of nature. Martha reached for a cup of tea, then spoke softly. "You've done well, Jake. Not just with the work, but with everything else. You've proven that you can be trusted. That's not easy. Few people learn that." Jake looked at her, feeling a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. "I'm glad, ma'am. I want to be someone you can trust, someone who's worth having around." Martha's eyes softened. "Maybe in time you will be, but remember, Jake, trust is never permanent. It's a gift that must be renewed every day. And that's true for both of us." Jake nodded, understanding the depth of her words. He realized that his journey was not just about finding work or a place to stay. It was about building a connection with someone who had been shaped by life's challenges, someone whose trust was hard-won, but priceless once given. And so, as night fell over the ranch, the two of them sat together in quiet companionship, aware of the fragile trust that had begun to grow between them. The foundation had been laid, and the path ahead promised challenges, revelations, and a deepening bond that neither of them could yet fully understand, but both were willing to explore. The ranch, the animals, and the vast open land around them seemed to echo the possibilities of new beginnings. For Jake, this was more than a place to work. It was a chance to be part of a story larger than himself, to connect with another human being in a meaningful way, and to discover that patience, respect, and understanding could transform even the loneliest of hearts. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, with the golden sun spilling across the wide fields of the ranch. The air smelled of wet earth and grass, and the soft sounds of animals stirring filled the quiet. Jake woke earlier than usual, his mind buzzing with anticipation. Today felt different. After days of work, trust building, and quiet understanding, there was a sense that something in their relationship was about to change. Something deeper, more personal. He dressed quickly and stepped outside. The ranch was already alive with movement. Horses moved in the stables, cows lowed from their pens, and chickens pecked at the ground. Martha was at the barn, her tall figure moving with precise, confident motions as she prepared tools and checked on the livestock. "Good morning, Jake," she called out, her voice carrying easily across the yard. "Morning, ma'am," he replied, tipping his hat. He noticed the faint softness in her tone, something he hadn't heard before, a quiet warmth beneath her strong exterior. They worked together through the morning, repairing fences, checking cattle, and tending to small chores around the ranch. Jake had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the ranch and to Martha's instructions. He didn't just follow her directions, he anticipated her needs, offering help before she asked. She noticed, and it pleased her more than she admitted. Around midday, they took a break under the shade of a large oak tree. The sunlight filtered through the branches, casting dappled patterns on the ground. Martha handed Jake a bottle of water, and he drank gratefully. "You've done well," she said quietly. "Better than I expected." "I just try to do my best, ma'am," Jake replied, looking at her with quiet sincerity. "This place, it's important, and so are the people here. You've built something amazing, Martha. I respect that." Her gaze softened, and she looked away for a moment, focusing on the distant hills. "It's been hard, Jake. Managing this ranch alone, living through losses. It shaped me, and yet, seeing someone treated, and me with respect, it's unexpected. I understand more than you think. I've been lonely for a long time, but that doesn't mean I don't see the effort and care in what others do. I see you, Martha. I respect you." Her eyes met his, and for a moment the barrier she had built over years of hardship seemed to weaken. There was vulnerability there, hidden beneath strength, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. Later that afternoon, a problem arose. One of the cows had slipped in a muddy section of the pasture and injured its leg. Martha immediately went into action, moving quickly to assess the situation. Jake followed her, helping where he could. Together, they carefully lifted and guided the cow to a safer area. "Good work," Martha said quietly, a rare note of praise in her voice. "You've got quick thinking and courage. That matters more than you know." Jake felt a warmth in his chest at her words. He realized that his efforts were not just being noticed, they were being appreciated. And he began to feel that he had earned a place here, not just as a worker, but as someone who mattered to her. The rest of the day passed with a sense of quiet accomplishment. The injured cow was tended to, the fences were secure, and the ranch felt calm and orderly as the sun began to lower toward the horizon. As evening approached, Martha and Jake walked toward the house. The sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink, and the air carried the soft scent of wildflowers. The animals were settling down and the ranch was peaceful.
Inside, Martha prepared a simple meal.
Jake sat at the wooden table, his hands resting lightly on the surface. The room was warm, lit by the glow of lanterns, and smelled of cooked vegetables and fresh bread. "You've done more than just work these past few days," Martha said softly. "You've earned trust, not just mine, but of the ranch itself. That's rare." Jake looked at her, feeling both nervous and confident. "I've tried to do right by you in this place. That's all I can do." Martha's gaze softened, and for the first time she allowed herself a small smile. "You've shown patience, respect, and understanding. That's more than I expected from anyone in years." "And it matters, Jake." "It really does." They ate quietly for a while, the silence comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. Then Martha spoke again, her voice low but steady. "There's something I want to tell you, something I haven't shared with anyone. It's part of why I warned you that first day." Jake leaned forward slightly, attentive but careful.
"I'll listen, ma'am."
"Whatever it is." Martha took a deep breath. "I've been hurt before, badly. I lost my husband many years ago, and after that I learned that not everyone is trustworthy.
I had people come and go, some who pretended to care but only caused pain.
That's why I set boundaries, like the warning I gave you. It wasn't just about curiosity. It was about protecting myself. Jake listened carefully, sensing the weight of her words. I understand, he said quietly. I don't want to hurt you. I want to be someone you can trust. Someone who's worth your time and care.
Martha studied him for a long moment.
There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, mixed with caution. Maybe in time, you will be. But it has to be slow, Jake. Trust isn't given lightly, and it can't be taken for granted. I understand, he said. I can wait. I've waited a long time already. I know patience is worth it. Over the following days, their bond continued to grow. Jake helped with chores, tended to the animals, and even repaired parts of the house that needed attention. He showed not just skill, but respect and care. Martha began to open up more, sharing small details of her life, her losses, and the challenges she faced running the ranch alone. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The colors in the sky reflected in their eyes, and the silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. You've changed things here, Jake, Martha said softly. Not just the ranch, but me. You've reminded me that it's possible to trust someone again, that it's okay to let someone in. Jake felt his heart swell. I don't want to take advantage of that trust, ma'am. I just want to be here, helping, supporting, and maybe, in time, being part of your life. Martha looked at him, her eyes shining faintly in the lantern light. You've earned that chance, she said quietly. But it's up to you to keep earning it every day. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them grew stronger. Jake was no longer just a worker. He was a companion, a partner in the daily rhythm of ranch life. They shared laughter, small joys, and quiet moments together. Trust had blossomed into something deeper, a connection built on patience, respect, and understanding. One evening, as they sat near the barn after finishing chores, a cool breeze blowing through the trees, Martha turned to Jake. I feel safe with you, Jake. Safer than I have in years. Jake reached out, gently placing a hand over hers. And I'll keep it that way, I promise. There was a quiet moment, the kind that held a lifetime in its stillness. The sun set behind the hills, and the ranch was bathed in soft golden light. In that moment, the loneliness that had haunted both of them for so long began to fade. Martha smiled softly, a rare and genuine expression. You've changed my world, Jake. I don't know how it happened so quickly, but I trust you. Completely. Jake felt a warmth spread through his chest. And I trust you, Martha. I've waited a long time for something real, something worth holding on to. And I think I found it here, with you. That night, as they sat together on the porch, the stars twinkling above, the ranch felt alive in a new way. It wasn't just a place of work or solitude anymore. It was a place of trust, care, and companionship. Two lonely hearts had found each other, and the bond between them promised a future filled with understanding, shared work, and mutual respect. Over the coming months, their relationship continued to grow. Jake became an indispensable part of the ranch, not just as a worker, but as a partner. Martha no longer had to face the challenges of life alone. They shared not only the labor of running the ranch, but also the quiet joys of companionship, the laughter, the small celebrations, and the comfort of knowing someone truly understood them. The warning that had seemed strange on his first day, "Don't look between my legs," was no longer about secrecy or curiosity. It was about respect, boundaries, and trust. Jake had honored it, and in doing so he had earned a place in Martha's life, a place of understanding and connection that neither of them had thought possible after years of solitude. By the time spring arrived, the ranch was thriving more than ever. The animals were healthy, the fields were lush, and the partnership between Martha and Jake had strengthened into something lasting. They had built not only a life together, but a deep bond of trust and respect that would carry them through whatever challenges the future might bring. And so, Under the open sky, with the vast ranch stretching out around them, the widow and the cowboy found something far more valuable than work or solitude. They found each other, and in doing so, they discovered that even the loneliest hearts could heal when met with patience, respect, and genuine care.